While the pandemic was a period that kept most of us isolated and inside our homes, it was also a time for some of us to look inward and ask ourselves, is this really what I want to be doing with my life? That's the case for a woman from Maine who left behind a 30-year career to try something new. And as Samantha shows us, she has no plans of looking back.
His name was Brian. Everybody called him Rocky. He was the most charismatic person I think that you could ever meet in your whole life. And he wasn't afraid of anything.
Susan Casey and her brother Brian shared a bond stronger than their DNA.
His life took him all over the world. And I used to say my brother's life expanded me.
But when her brother's life was tragically cut short almost a decade ago, Susan found herself going down a path she never expected to be on.
I was in the darkest place I'd ever been in my entire life. I didn't know if I was going to make it. That's how it felt.
Despite helping others navigate their own grief and emotions for 30 years as a therapist, Susan couldn't get out of her own way. So instead of running from those feelings, she leaned into them. First, writing a blog on grief, and then an entire book.
Here I was in this field, and yet I was so terrified I was never going to feel joy again. We get so terrified to sit in the quiet and feel it because we're afraid we're going to get lost in it. You know, if I start crying, I'm never going to stop. But actually, when we allow ourselves, when we've been cracked wide open, when we allow ourselves to sit in that, that's where the healing starts to happen, because you're allowing that grief to move through you.
This idea to share lessons around grief and the stories of inspiration that come from those lessons.
Hi, thanks for stopping by.
Bloomed into a new podcast and brand Susan calls Rock Your Shine, Cracked Wide Open. The series focuses on grief and the transformational stories within those hardships, whether it be divorce, a loss of a loved one, or even addiction.
I feel like my purpose is just to bring people's stories to the world.
That leap allowed her to leave behind her corporate gig of 3 decades, but still have tough conversations, like this one with 2 former teachers.
It's so exciting to have you all here.
The 3 sat for a mock podcast episode the day of our interview to give us a better idea of what listeners can expect from the series.
Candy and I always felt like natural teachers. And this was anything but natural for us.
Honestly, I felt really stupid, and I felt like a first-year teacher in many ways, and it was really tough.
Candy Allen and Julie Clay recently ended their lifelong careers as teachers. They say the difficulties of the job through the pandemic and the grief they faced along the way helped push them into retirement early.
How did this grief, this trauma, impact you as human beings? What did you discover about yourself that maybe you didn't know before?
Without this deep, deep, challenging, just very sad and powerful and painful experience, that I wouldn't be able to feel this enormous and intense joy and peace that I feel right now.
The changes I was seeing, the demands on the job, along with the news that I was going to be a first-time grandmother, all of it came together and made me realize, you know, it's time for the next chapter.
I'm interested in those hopeful stories, because that is what brings people hope. To know that if I'm in this dark place, but you got out of it, then that means I probably can too. That's why I wanted to do the podcast. I wanted to bring hope to people suffering in grief. And not just over a death of a person. People carry grief over a whole bunch of different things. Divorce, losing a pet, loss of a dream. You know, I think we're always all grieving something at some point in our life.
This podcast is just the beginning of her new chapter. And despite his passing, Susan believes her brother will be with her every step of the way.
Even in death, my brother was continuing to expand my life. And his death has helped to deepen my understanding of so many things that I thought I understood. I think he's here right now saying, you go rock your shine, sis.